I'll call the Executive Committee meeting to order for August of 2023. Is there a motion to second to approve the agenda?
Move approval. Second.
Motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. And approval of the minutes, we do have one change. Note the council name was different than what Scott was not here, but other than that, any changes to the minutes as presented?
Move approved. Second.
Motion to second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Okay, item 4 is consent and vote on the financial statement. Ted? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, nothing,
Taking a bite.
report. I got approved by March finance, so.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item 5 is consent and vote on the contracts and expenses, though.
Thank you. We've got 2 items for you here. One is our regular office insurance that we pay annually, so that was included in the budget. The other is the final payment for, I think it's the final payment for our website redesign for now. That was included in the budget as well. So we'd ask for you to approve this. We recommend approval. And then once we're done, Gunnar has an update on the website while we're on this topic, so we'll turn it over to him once we're through approving this.
Okay.
Move approval. Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carried.
Yeah.
Mayor Phillips, I appreciate you being here. I think you're online, just so you understand, you cannot, you can certainly be here for the open meeting, but as far as Stephanie's vote, you cannot be there is no alternate on the executive committee, so.
Okay, so no vote from me.
No vote for you, Tom, no.
All right,
But thanks for being here, though.
I'd leave.
you bet.
I mean, I'd already be gone.
You never would have been here.
I might anyway.
All right, better. Over to you.
Thank you. We just want to do a real brief preview of the new website. You might recall that during our last quadrennial review, the Federal Highway Administration recommended that we update our website, so we've undertaken to do so. And we've been in a soft launch position for the last few weeks, make sure all the kinks are being worked out. And it will be announced on the new system here, new email system here shortly. So this is the look and feel of it. A few notes that I will mention. It's been at least a decade since this has been updated, so it was really important. It was a recommendation of our last quadrennial review. We did update the logo. I think that ties in nicely with our 40th anniversary. The logo had scaling problems that go to different size formats, and we took the opportunity to make sure it was very transportation focused. You see that kind of looks like a node in corridors with streets, stuff. I want to say thank you. A lot of you remember jurisdictions provided photographs to us, which are featured throughout the website. They demonstrate, they show transportation projects throughout the region, and highlight the projects that your community's done nicely. It is the same URL. One note is that because we shifted over to the new one, old agendas that might have old links to the old website may be broken. All the documentation has been retained. So if you ever encounter such an issue as that, just please reach out to staff. We'll make sure we can get to that information. Also coming soon is Gov Delivery. We've talked to you about this previously. We're launching this program this month. The primary benefit of this is for just distributing our agendas. So if you have a constituent who wants to sign up to receive agendas, they can do so automatically without having to contact staff or staff having to spend any time doing it. The same system is used by Iowa DOT and some member governments of the NGOs. And just to give you a heads up that you will be receiving a message probably in the next week or so saying, welcome to this new system, we're transitioning over. And we would ask that you just stay subscribed. You would have the option to go in there and say, I don't want to receive agendas anymore. And you would stop receiving agendas. And that would be awesome. Right. So please stay subscribed. Last thing I'll mention, the website update is nice has a nice time with their 40th anniversary. And so we have scheduled an anniversary celebration. Councilman McKinney had the suggestion to do something like this. And so we've scheduled it for 2 o'clock Friday, September 29th at Smash Park in West Des Moines. I will be challenging at least one of you to a game of pickleball. We're gonna have you to buy your own drinks for obvious reasons, but we will provide venue and orders. And then the invitees here are our policy members, technical and staff, so we all have the opportunity to celebrate together. That's it for me. I'd be happy to take any questions about this or other items.
I do hope you can all come. I think it'd be a good time to just kind of kick back and relax and a little time to celebrate a little bit. So hopefully you can make it on the 29th.
Well, I might have missed it, but will be anything out of calendar reminder?
I will, yes.
Field stack was one.
Yeah. Ooh. Only was at a different list.
Or harsh trial order. I'm not buying.
Gotta make up with the legislature.
Yeah, get through all the stop first.
All right, any other questions for Gunnar? All right, thank you, Gunnar.
Mr. Smooth Traffic guy over here.
Item 6, report and vote on the transload development and operational agreement amendment. Dylan?
Thank you. Last month, we talked about this a little bit, and we have this agreement with Des Moines Industrial that has a stipulation that they would reimburse us $250,000 for expenses. However, after we started the invoicing process, we learned from the Federal Highway and Iowa DOT that we cannot accept their payment because we've already been reimbursed through the Federal Highway Administration for those expenses. Therefore, we're recommending that we essentially remove that paragraph 13 from the agreement. In the agenda packet, there was an actual amendment language that Scott proposed to us to take that out, to make everything all above board. And this is basically just for posterity's sake. So when someone looks back at the agreement in 10 years and says, hey, did we ever get paid for that? It's very clear that that was just taken out. Des Moines Industrial is on board with this as well. So we just need to get this amendment approved and then that will be taken care of.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So,
I'm gonna abstain.
yeah, an abstention by Matt. Thank you, Matt. So abstention by Matt. Any further, and that motion carries. All right, item 7, report and vote on the employee handbook.
Thank you. This is another item that we discussed last month and now it's back for your approval. Back in March, I want to say we brought this, we started undertaking a review of the handbook. The handbook was last approved by the board in 2012, so it's been quite a while. And there have been changes made to it by staff over that period of time, but that wasn't brought forward to the board. So we wanted to bring everything forward, have the chair assigned a subcommittee to review this, and thank you for their time. They met a couple of times and legal counsel reviewed this, and now we have it back for you for approval. I'll walk through some of the changes. Again, we walked through this last time too, but kind of go chapter by chapter. If you go to the next slide. There's a lot of just minor formatting things and editing taken care of throughout, but the more substantive changes, for what it's worth, in the introduction, we made it clear that any updates to the handbook would be by the policy committee, so not these intermittent staff updates, that everything would have to come back to the policy committee and then would be reviewed periodically. Updated some provisions for the drug and alcohol policy, and that'll come back in the appendix. There was a more substantial update for one of the appendices related to the drug and alcohol policy testing procedures. That would be new. Employment policies, chapter 3, we updated the initial probation period from 3 to 12 months. Doesn't change a whole lot besides that, it just makes it clear that that's the probation period. If you go to the next one, chapter 4 is where we probably had the most change to the policy. There currently or previously was no maximum accrual for sick time or vacation time. So the subcommittee recommended language to take care of that and put caps on vacation and sick time. So maximum sick time to be accrued would be 1,200 hours. And then maximum vacation time that could be carried over from year to year would be 240 hours. And of that, 40 hours could be cashed out annually. And then if you don't use it, you lose it. There were some other minor changes in there as well, but those were the big things. One of the changes was, updating military leave policy, bereavement leave policy, and those kind of things. Go to chapter, the next page, the remaining chapters, compensation. This just in reference to the salary schedule and the compensation adjustment matrix that was approved a few years ago, just to be consistent there. increased the longevity bonuses by a different increment. Went from $600 increments to $750 increments, nothing too major. And then the employee benefits, again, clarifying language around the military leave. The other, I guess, more major piece to this, if you go to the appendices, these were two new things that had been put in since the handbook was last approved by the policy board. The remote work policy was something that we've had for a little bit, but again, it wasn't brought before the board. So the group looked at that. They made a few tweaks. The main thing was to clarify that that could be up to 2 days a week, and up to 2 days per week outside the office would be allowed. And then there was some liability, workplace safety issues that had to be put in there to satisfy the lawyers and so forth. And then the drug and alcohol policy and testing program is amended. That was something that was new. We took the city of Ankeny's policy, legal reviewed it, and that's all going forward now. So those are the big changes. I think for this group, Len and Mayor Connor were on that committee for that. Joe Gatto was on there as well. So again, thanks for their time on that. I thought it went really well. I think everyone was satisfied with what we have here. So this is for your approval, and we'll take this to policy committee next week as well.
Full disclosure, I did very little work, none. I was there for the second, so. Move.
Second. Thanks to the rest of the committee. Motion is second.
He moved it.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I did something.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. And then takes us then to the policies and procedures manual.
Yeah, this is similar in terms of time frame and process that went through. Earlier this year, there was a lot of questions of what certain policies were. So we put them all together into one manual, and then we started the review process. So this was reviewed by legal counsel. A lot of these were financially related, so they were also reviewed by the financial subcommittee a couple months ago. Throughout the process, we identified a few new policies that we didn't have that we recommended having, so we put those in there as well. If you go to the next page, I've kind of tried to break down what is in this without going into details on all of them. I will note that a lot of these policies and procedures are things that we already had in place. So this isn't changing anything really, it's just assembling a lot of these into one document. When I say they were either existing and they were actually approved by the policy committee in recent memory. So for example, the payments, chapter 2, the payments and contract approval, that was approved back in 2017 by the policy board. Some other things were approved back in the early 90s, and we've just kind of inherited them as existing staff members were around then, but we've just kept using them. And so we've updated those a little bit along the way too. Where we didn't have existing policies, we tried to note that a lot of these we took from either our member communities. So the credit card policy, for example, we borrowed from the city of West Des Moines. Otherwise, a lot of these policies too, we borrowed from the Omaha MPO, which is someone we work with quite a bit on these types of organizational issues, and they have a good policy manual, so we borrowed a lot of language from them as a starting place. So if there's any questions about these, I'm happy to go through them. I think this is by no means set in stone. As policies come and go, we'll continue to adjust this, but again, the main goal is just to put all these in one place for easy access by staff, by the board, by the public, by whomever, and that we're all on the same page with what's in here.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Item 9 is report and vote on the interim executive director annual review and compensation adjustment. So we, again, I had appointed a committee of Mayor Clark from Waukee, Councilman Gatto from Des Moines, and Tom Haddon from West Des Moines to serve as a committee to perform the evaluation for Todd at the time. And then that obviously when Todd resigned, that was not conducted, but that left the void as far as Dylan's evaluation for this year. So I asked the same committee to conduct an evaluation for Dylan as the interim executive director for the past year. So that committee has done that. As you can see in your packet, they have recommended, they have completed the evaluation and met with Dylan and provided that evaluation. I don't think the evaluation is on the packet.
No.
But we can certainly provide that if you want to see that. And again, we can provide that before the policy committee meeting next week. But the committee recommends a salary increase from Dylan's base salary as in his current position to 118,540 or 4.25%, which is based on the staff compensation review matrix. And then he is also now obviously serving as the interim executive director, and we had the question as far as what his salary should be during his time as interim executive director. And so the next page provides that is that the committee has reviewed that as well and recommends a 12.5% increase from Dylan's base salary to be for his time as the interim executive director. So that would be retroactive to May 1 until such time as he no longer is serving as the interim executive director. So the committee, no one on that committee, Joe, are you online right now, Joe? Okay, so Joe's not online right now, so I'm making the presentation now, but certainly a policy. I know Mayor Clark and Tom should be there, so if you have any questions for that committee, they'd be happy to answer them, but I'm presenting because no one from the committee is here today. So.
Well, refresh my memory, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Bob's fine too.
Did we have a range, we had a range for the former director, salary range, was there? Or was it just
There was a,
annual thing that we increased based on what performance or what? How is it structured?
There's a salary matrix that,
For director, for the director?
yeah,
Okay,
that we've used in the
I
past.
assume that's how we got the 12.5 to get him within that range at least, right? He wasn't in the range, the appropriate range even, right? For the director.
Todd was not?
No, Dylan
Or
was.
Dylan was not?
yeah, the handbook says that or the recently adopted policy and procedures manual, that, and that was approved before, but the salary range for executive director starts at 113, then there's.
Okay, so it gets you, that gets you in the range of what, okay, that's all I needed to know.
Yeah.
And is that 12.5%, then assuming there's a different permanent director, does that go away then at that
Yes,
point?
that will go away at such point as either, yes. So the bottom line is, if Dylan were to be appointed as executive director, obviously we would establish a contract and sort of separate salary for that. If there's another executive director, then he's no longer interim executive director, and he would go back to his base salary of the 118,540.
Thank you. I'll move it.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. I guess I took. We have
You did it. That's, I think both of them, doesn't it? I think both those items.
So we had a vote, okay, I'll take that as a vote on item 9 on the annual review and compensation. So is there a vote on the motion on the salary adjustments?
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, that motion carries as well. All right, item 11 is a report and vote on the federal fiscal year 23-26 TIP amendment. Zach?
Thank you. We have a tip amendment request from the Iowa Department of Transportation. This is for a project on US 69 in the city of Des Moines. It's located just north of the railroad viaduct on Southeast 14th and then just south of Fremont Street. So it's basically that section right on either side of 235. It's a maintenance project. They're doing, they're diamond grinding and patching it on the northbound lanes. It doesn't involve any NPO funding whatsoever. It's just a DOT project. The total federal aid on it's $400,000. They're using primary road funds and National Highway Performance Program funds. And their request is to move this project. It's currently in federal fiscal year 2024, and they're asking to move it into federal fiscal year 2023, so they can go ahead and begin work on that project. Happy to take any questions you have, but it's before you for your approval.
Move.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Item 12, report and vote on the water trails bill grant payment approvals. All right.
So we have pay app number 8 for you for approval today. Polk County Snyder and Polk County have both reviewed this and concur with the $325,000 amount that's on this. A little bit less than what the past ones have been. We probably won't see ones this low again over the next few months, I would guess. If you can go to the next slide, as far as progress that has been done over the last few months, work continues on the south bank of the river downstream of where those recreational drops are going to be. They've put a construction platform in there that's going to allow them to start putting riprap in there now that the river levels have dropped low enough to be able to do that. One of the reasons why this one is lower than it has been in the past is they have not hauled as much rock this month. So there's not as many stored materials on this pay app. And then the levee work on the north bank, is wrapping up, what the city of Des Moines is doing. And so that's going to allow them to get onto that north bank and start working on that maintenance path, which will allow them to begin doing more work on the north side of the river. So that's kind of what they've been doing over the last month or so, and what's going to be happening in the next month. If you go to the next slide, I believe I have one more here. So I guess just back on the pay app, it is a 325,000. Most of that, about 191,000, was for actual work that was done, excavation, hauling dirt, that kind of thing. And then there was $133,000 in store materials. So there still was a little bit of store materials. We are expecting that probably on the next pay app, they will start pulling those store materials onto the project. And so we will be able to start reimbursing for, I believe we have about $1.4 million in store materials right now. So we should start seeing those show up on our future pay apps. The next thing, at the last board meeting, we had discussed being able to allow staff to administratively approve these payments. Just speed up the process a lot. It will allow us to pay the contractor sooner. On most DOT projects, the contractors are used to being paid bi-weekly. So this, by allowing staff to approve these administratively, it will probably speed the process up by about 3 weeks. Just to make things go a little more streamlined. The payments will continue to show up on the monthly financial statements, so you would still be able to have access to all that and see those payments being made. And then, of course, if there are change orders, we haven't had any yet, but if there are change orders, those would have to come back to the board for approval. So that's all I have. The recommendation that we are making is to approve the pay app with the ability for staff in the future to make these payments administratively. Happy to take any questions.
Couple things that, so, I don't have a problem with the changes as far as how we make the payments, but if those reports go into the finance statement, if some, you know, when we go through the finance statement, somebody's highlight, by the way, this payout went or whatever. So, you know how we're reading all this material, I try to read as well as I can, but anyway, just highlight that as part of the report or whatever. Not, we wouldn't have to take action on it, you still have the authority, staff still have the authority to make the payments or whatever, but.
Yeah, we can definitely
We
do
gotta
that.
highlight that, so we gotta know what we got going out, and we gotta know what's going on too, keep us engaged a little bit more.
Absolutely, and we could continue to have these updates on the payments if you want.
I don't know that we need a full, just figure out a structure where we can say, okay, this month, here's what went out or whatever, here's what was paid for, and we move on.
Yep.
But that way it's not holding you up, you can still get the payments made, but we'd still kind of be engaged.
Yeah, we could have a monthly report on it.
Yeah, okay,
But I think it'd still be good to have a monthly
Yeah.
report just for full transparency.
yeah, okay,
All right, we'll do that.
All right. But that is our motion on this.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Abstentions, motion carries. Then item 13 is report and vote on the comprehensive safety action plan consultant contract approval.
So we have a draft contract with Tool Design for the comprehensive safety action plan before you for approval today. Just as a reminder, we had 3 firms that submitted RFPs for this plan development. We had a selection committee that reviewed all of the proposals and then went through an interview process with each one of the consultant firms and ultimately decided on Tool Design. If you go to the next slide, there's some details on that we discussed last month as far as how the scoring worked and things of that nature. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to address them. At exec last month, you gave us authorization to work with Tool on developing the contract. So we started those negotiations. They developed a contract and sent to us. We reviewed it. We provided it to legal counsel who also reviewed it. I would note that probably the main thing in that contract is that it's a not to exceed $1 million. If you recall, we had $800,000 in federal funds to spend on this project. It's 20% match. So the additional $200,000 will be coming from NPO reserve funds as you had approved at a previous meeting. So the contract will not exceed $1 million. And Scott, I don't know if you have any additional details you want to add on the contract. It was really pretty straightforward and basic and made a few very minor tweaks to it, I would say. It sent it back to Tool and they approved all those changes that we suggested.
Yeah, they accepted all the changes that I had suggested, and then Zach provided me with the scope document, which was more extensive, but I didn't have any issues with that either, so I think it's pretty straightforward. It's a good process.
So happy to take any questions, otherwise it's before you for your approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Same sign.
I would make one quick update on that as well. We have been talking with Federal Highway on our grant agreement. I spoke with them today, and we are expecting that our grant agreement for this will be hopefully before us at the next month's meetings. We'll keep you up to date on that, but we will not be commencing any work with the consultants until that grant agreement is finalized. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Thanks, Zach. And then my item 14 is a report on the mobilizing tomorrow.
So just want to give you a quick update on the update to mobilizing tomorrow. So as you probably are aware, every 5 years, we're required to update our long-range transportation plan. This is something that we're required to do by the Federal Highway Administration. Our last update was approved in November of 2019. So this next update will be due in November of 2024. So about 15 months to develop this plan. We began work on this internally probably back around November of 2022. A lot of data collection. We started monthly meetings with the Iowa DOT to work on our model update. So that's kind of the work that's been going on behind the scenes currently. We're getting ready to really dive into the development of the plan itself or the update to the plan. If you go to the next slide, I think we have some goals that the staff kind of has for the plan update. And of course, we're open to any kind of feedback on this. But currently, we're not really looking at doing a extreme overhaul of the existing plan. We all feel pretty happy from a staff perspective on where the plan is at as far as most of the content. So we're not suggesting that we do an overhaul, just more of an update to the existing plan. One thing we would like to continue to do is to continue to improve on the readability and conciseness of the plan. This is something that Federal Highway has suggested that we continue to look at. We did a lot on the last plan update to improve that, I think, but I think there's still some things we can do to continue that. So maybe some formatting and how we lay out the plan. Some of those changes might happen, but again, content probably mostly going to stay the same. We also plan on releasing draft chapters individually for review. We think this would be a much better way to allow communities to digest the information that we're spinning out there instead of trying to have them look at an entire plan all at one time. So those are some of the goals we have for the plan update. As far as kind of timeline, which we expect to see over the next couple of quarters through the end of the year, we are going to be finalizing the model update, working on TAZ development. The planning area boundary needs to be updated slightly, and our planning urban area boundary, those things we'll be looking at over the next couple months. You'll probably see some stuff on the agendas next month about the urban area boundary, the planning area boundary. And then also we plan to reach out and start doing project solicitation over the next few months as well. So just give you an idea of the kind of things you're going to see on this over the coming months.
How's that work, Zach, in the project solicitation thing? What, you reach out to the member governments or?
Yep, so we'll reach out to member governments. We'll probably supply them with all the projects they submitted in the last long range plan to kind of help give them an idea of what they already have out there from last time. Typically, we do that as we send out like a Google form so they can fill that out and submit it to us, each project individually. That allows them to kind of tackle that on a case-by-case basis.
How about the state project, the DOT?
The DOT, same thing, the DOT. So if there are projects you have in mind that you want your staff to include in there, just make them aware when we send that out.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I think I might have one more slide on here. One thing that we really wanted to get feedback from this group on is that typically when we do a long range plan update, we have a steering committee that helps the development of that plan. One thing that we would like to put out there as a suggestion this time is to not have a steering committee for the long range plan. There's a couple of reasons for suggesting that. One is that we're going to have a steering committee that will be meeting fairly frequently for the comprehensive safety action plan. And just based on, everybody's busy, we don't want to, take up a lot of people's time. We know it's valuable. So that's one reason why we're suggesting that maybe we don't do a steering committee meeting. And the other part of that is because we're just kind of proposing a more basic update. We don't quite know if it's necessary to bring a group together once a month to overview the Mobilizing Tomorrow update. What we are hopefully suggesting is that we can just use the technical committee and the planning and engineering subcommittees that are going to meet on a monthly basis and use them to provide that review and input to executive policy rather than having a steering committee. So again, this is an idea we have. We'd like to throw it out to you and see if you have any thoughts or concerns about that approach.
Personally, I think it makes some sense. I don't know if any of you ever served on either side committees, but a lot of data, a lot of stuff that put you to sleep and after about 3 or 4 hours of it, but you know, as long as we have some input on the final product, I think I'm totally good with that.
Great. All right, that's how we will proceed on that then. I think that was my last slide on. Oh, I have one more, I'm sorry. This just kind of gives you a quick overview of what we're anticipating, how this would look, where staff will develop a draft chapter. We'd submit it to the Iowa DOT so they can provide their review and input. And then it would go to our technical committee for them to review and incorporate the DOT comments, send to tech will review it, incorporate their comments, and then we would send it over to out for public comments. We can start collecting public comment on it, collect those comments, present it to executive policy, and then once executive policy have approved those chapters, we will finalize the chapters for the final document. So it's kind of a little bit of an overview of what that technical review and policy approval process would look like. That's my last slide.
Zach, I don't have a whole lot of history on this plan. I was able to hear 19 when it was adopted, but does this help, I guess, prioritize funding for different projects going forward, or what is the kind of highest level explanation of what this plan is?
Yes, so it's a 40 to 50, well, no, 20 to 25 year time horizon, basically. So we'll be looking out to 2045, 2050. It prioritizes all of or it outlines all of the transportation projects that will be happening in the region over that time period. And it helps prioritize the projects, help us determine, what projects we're going to be focusing on for funding over that time period.
It's important because any project that wants to receive federal funds has to be in the plan or supported by the plan. And it also kind of is the guidance for our SDP funding. So how much are we going to spend on bridges and roads and transit? And that's really where that conversation starts. Is that long-range plan.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All right. Then item 15 is report on the Clean Air Attainment Program.
This is the last one for me. So we have started the process of collecting pre-applications for ICAP funding. We received 3 applications, one from the city of Ankeny for their North Ankeny Boulevard improvements. Their request was for 1.9 million. Polk County submitted one for the traffic signal improvements, right around 350,000 for that one. And then West Des Moines for their traffic system vehicle detection improvement project at 732,000. So those are the 3 projects that we've received pre-applications for. The process moving forward, if you go to the next slide. We'll bring these back to you in September for your approval. And once you've approved it, we'll submit the resolutions on those project sponsors so they can include them in their applications when they submit to the DOT by the October 1st deadline. So next month, we'll bring it back for your approval. Happy to take any questions if you have them.
Okay, any questions for Zach on that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Then item 16 is report on the Purple Heart Highway, Gunner.
Good afternoon. Over the last couple of weeks, had the opportunity to brief all the corridor communities. So I've had this conversation with all but 2 of the policymakers in the room here. So a lot of this is going to be familiar to most of you. I will go over the background here very briefly. Of course, if you have any more in-depth questions, please feel free to hit me up with them. Just a real quick recap. We inherited this most iteration of the project from the Iowa DOT. You recall the Iowa DOT did major stakeholder engagement sessions, talked to a lot of the stakeholders in the ag and public sectors and economic development professionals. And then passed off this action plan to us, which required state exemption for speed, federal exemption for weight, and then the technical analysis that would still need to be done. And then finally, if all those conditions were met, the Iowa DOT would submit for designation. We engaged with stakeholders throughout this process, starting with Billy Hunt at the Cultivation Corridor, and then Bill Northey at Agribusiness Association and Employee Transportation Coalition. We met with all these ag stakeholders. They effectively assembled an ag stakeholder group, and we had meetings with them in November and December, where we discussed the action plan is laid out by the Iowa DOT, and what type of exemption language could look like. Those meetings were cordial and felt very productive and, like there was a good exchange of information. However, we were kind of stuck in a holding pattern, and that's the reason why I haven't had many updates, or the updates weren't very satisfying for the last few months. It's because we were waiting on them. They wanted to reconvene without us in the room, and their commitment then was they would hash out and then relay back to us what their findings were. So we finally had that follow-up meeting with those stakeholders late in June, like the very last week of June, and everyone went out to vacation. And what the feedback that we got at that time was that they really appreciated the positive approach, meaningful engagement. There is interest in continuing that engagement more broadly in transportation topics. However, we have learned that the Polk County Farm Bureau is in opposition to this at this moment. So that really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We've all followed this. We've all recognized that the Farm Bureau is going to be an important stakeholder in this whole conversation, and whether their temperature on the whole thing was going to be critical. One thing that we did learn throughout this process is that the Polk County Farm Bureau actually adopted a policy after the last time this discussion was had, and that policy says effectively we oppose converting by highways into interstates if no state and viable alternative routes available for farm equipment. I do want to note that this is a summary of Mike Steenhook's understanding of the policy. We have not seen the exact policy language yet. That is the piece that we are hoping to get. It is also interesting to know that this is how Farm Bureau operates. This was, our understanding is that this was initiated as a Polk County Farm Bureau initiative or a public policy position that was been adopted at the state level, which has been adopted at the federal level. So we've all known this is a steep hill, but I don't think any one of us appreciated just how deeply entrenched this issue was, and that it is that Purple Heart Highway conversation in Polk County grew to a federal policy position by Farm Bureau. A few other takeaways here. I do think we improved overall relationships with the ag community. We've developed some good trust-based relationships with key allies. And the door does remain open to dialogue of the first state lawmakers who are open to discussing the state exemption. The partnership does remain interested in a pursuit of designation at this point. So some of the next steps is, now that we've had this follow-up meeting with the stakeholder group, as we had discussed with them, we have now scheduled a meeting with Polk County Farm Bureau that is occurring later this month to better understand their position, try to gain as much clarity as we can. Hold on one second. And then lastly, the other next step is just to continue discussion with the ag community about a proposal that came from from one of the farmers, a Farm Bureau member. And I just want to make sure you all have context on this. We've briefed all the corridor communities on this, but just so everyone has situational awareness, the current slow speed exemption is given administratively by the Iowa DOT. It starts at US 55 up here, or Hickman, and ends down here at Highway 69. The suggestion that came from a farmer to Mike Steenhook, who had been related to Stu Anderson and myself, was what if we moved the slow speed exemption further west, because that interchange can be a little bit hairy and a slow moving vehicle. So Stu has been shopping that around the Iowa DOT to see what level of support there is. I had conversations with our member jurisdictions on either side of that corridor, so namely Warren County and the city of Des Moines. Those conversations were positive. Warren County is like not an issue. By Warren County, I mean our policy committee member, Mark Snell, the supervisor there. And then I talked with Pam Cooksey at the city of Des Moines, said this is what they're thinking, and her feedback was Florida's probably a little bit too urbanized, but Southwest 9, there's no red flags. That's all the conversation has come at this point. I bring it to you to say, one, we've been trying to meaningfully engage with them, and I think something that would be a direct benefit to those stakeholders. There's no resolution to this as yet. I just want to make you all aware of that conversation. The last thing that I'll mention is that when we talk with the corridor communities, one of our goals was to understand the temperature. What is your interest in pursuing and continue to pursue this? I won't go into too much depth here, but I can say there was general consensus that we should keep engaging in a meaningful way. I think everyone accepts that there's challenges, and we all accept them. You know, we knew that going into this, but what we're hearing across the board is continue to engage, and I think we need to try to engage at two different levels. One, we need to engage directly with the farmers, the stakeholders, to involve them in our processes, see if there's something we can do to be direct benefit to them. But then also with some of our other ag stakeholders, so build more of these, our economic development professionals, to understand where else support we might have, or people who might have influence with some of our other people. That's me talking. Let me listen. Any comments, questions, feedback that you might have?
Gunnar and I had this discussion yesterday afternoon at length, and I'm sure others of you have talked to too, but. You know, it gets extremely frustrating to see this thing drag on and on and on, but by the same token. We've had a lot of time invested in it already. I do think it's important that that corridor is never developed the way that it was, I think, planned to increase development. So anything that we can do to encourage more economic development through that corridor, I think is important. And that's, as an MPO, we should be probably pursuing that. We got to find a different strategy. I mean, and I told Gunnar that in my experience with the Polk County Farm Bureau goes back. I mean, you know, we all of us, right, in Polk County, we have a lot of rural area, of course, that we represent some of those constituencies. And, you know, as we've changed districts and what have you, and redrawn boundaries, those things change. Like right now, Bob and Steve have most of the area where a lot of those ag landowners live. I had it in the past. We go to their meetings once a year, explain our budget. But this whole thing is generational. It's a handful of ag landowners that have been told by their uncles or their parents or whoever, we were promised that we were always going to be able to use that road when they built this thing, when they took the bridge out at the power plant. That was a promise made to us way back when, and by God, we're going to stick to it. But that small group, all they got to do is take a position. As you knew, they take a position, even if it's only a handful of them. Then the state farm bureau grabs a hold of it, federal farm, and it becomes bigger than it should be. I think you got to identify who those people are. I don't know who they are. They probably changed by now. I mean, back in the day, it was Mike Ugolini, it was Carol Miller. Yeah, a lot of those ag ground owners up there. They're reasonable people, but they people like us, they're not gonna listen to them. And it gotta be somebody that they trust, that they know, and I don't know who that is or what the dynamic of that is. But there's gotta be some sort of dialogue we can have at that local level with those folks. And it's gotta be a negotiation. It can't be, here's what we want, here's what we're gonna do, we want you to, you know, it's gotta be, and what can we do to help you, and what can you do to help us, that type of, I think. That would be the strategy I would accept, because once you get past that local farm bureau level, you're in the clear. But if you stop there, you're done, and that's what's happened.
I talked to Gunnar about and Dylan about this yesterday, and it's that meeting. A lot of it's farmers from around Altoona, Bondurant.
I assume they were.
Ashland's are one of the biggest ones. They don't like bike trails. They don't like, I mean, the bike trail between Bondurant and Altoona, stopped by two farmers. One of the farmers is Ashland. And they've sold off a lot of ground, bought some ground south. They're the ones that are very concerned about all of this.
Yeah.
And so I was going to reach out and get a couple other names, but I know Eshelman's are probably one of the top ones. Because he had a father that passed away, and then he had a son and Melissa. And I would say they're probably top 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just a handful of folks that we gotta try to reach out to and try to, you know. Yeah, and we gotta be able to offer them something, but there's gotta be somebody they trust too. And I used this example with Gunnar yesterday, you know, with our water quality initiatives that we're working on. You know, if I go up and talk to a farmer and say, have a county supervisor down in Polk County, they're gonna run me off, right? So it's gotta be somebody that they trust, they communicate with, and we happen to have that in our office now, but we didn't before. So I don't know how you structure that. The strategy is gotta change, and I'm not an expert in that. I'm just throwing out some ideas, but.
So thank you for that. And I think now that we've gone through this process, we've cultivated, or we have a clear understanding of their policy position better than we did before. And now it's time we're engaged, especially their electeds, to understand what those policies are. I think the strategy going forward is to be two-pronged. One is to engage with the ag stakeholders and see what give and take is available to us. So that needs to continue to occur. That is starting later this month, now that we're through this other process. And then the other side of it is understanding who else are the other champions that could be. So kind of the two-pronged approach directly with the ag stakeholders, with the farm community, and then also with other ag stakeholders. So this is something that we can continue discussing, and obviously we're gonna have more information after our meeting. I want to thank all of you. You had a lot of really great ideas that came out of our conversations, and we're acting on those ideas. So thank you for your guidance in those discussions, and we'll continue to seek your input and guidance with our market.
And I'm,
Mayor, this is Joe. Just a quick comment. Just to kind of echo Tom's point, and I talked to Dylan and to Gunner. Obviously, we need someone that they trust, but we also need someone that can relate to Farm Bureau. And I don't know if we have any policy committee or executive committee members that are a member of Farm Bureau, or anyone that has a relationship with the governor that is an elected official. I know that's probably not going to be anybody from Des Moines. But I mean, she could be very helpful through this whole process of kind of connecting both of our groups and allowing some trust to be built between us that we want to share this road with you. And I don't know how to reiterate that. You know, like Tom said, they're not going to listen to me or him, and I don't know what the strategy is, but that's something I think that we need to focus on. And I've said it before, and you know, we'll just reiterate that point. So hopefully we can move down that. And if we can't get to that point, then we might as well just move on and forget it and not waste any more time and staff time on it or money.
Thank you again, Councilman. You're absolutely right. So the two-pronged approach, as mentioned, one is directly engaged with the stakeholders, and the other prong is, I think we're now at we're at a stage where we can seek that intel to find out who those influencers might be in a position to help us. We have some advocates cultivated already. I haven't repeated it here, but we did have a conversation with Scott Marler and Debbie Durham earlier on in this process. They both like the approach that we had taken. So we do have that. We do have people who believe in this process, who are close to the governor's office. So, and the other thing I'll say is I want to thank you again, because a lot of the information that you have can be helpful in potentially identifying those. I'll mention Supervisor Snell from Warren County. He's been very helpful in this process as well, helping us look into and potentially identify those channels. Yeah. So thank you again. Really appreciate all the intel and guidance.
so again, I was beginning to say thanks for your comments. I met with Dylan and Gunnar at length this morning too. So we're gonna, the first two options I don't think it's appropriate yet. I understand we have to maybe at some point recognize that we may not be able to get this done and not spending more time on it, but I still think we do have opportunities, and I think we need to explore those opportunities. So I think we just need to pivot a little bit. And we've gone down this far. If we give up now, we lose any ground that we've gained so far right now. So let's keep it moving to the extent we can, and we can just keep evaluating it. So, Dean?
And I know I've said this every time this comes up, that we have to plug in the Southeast Connector to this, that the Southeast Connector opens up Eastern Polk County for all of us, for so many different things. And we had that discussion. So I won't reiterate it, but that's a major part of it.
I will briefly mention an idea that was floated out to the Councilman Kenny mentioned it first, but what if there were an economic impact study that showed what, put a dollar amount to what this interstate designation was worth? And with Mayor O'Connor, one thought was, well, what if it was interstate designation coupled with some of these other major improvements like the Southeast Connector, so that we can show not just what the interstate designation does, but what the package of projects can do together for economic development. But that's a longer discussion about if there's appetite to do that kind of work, what the scope would be. There's a lot of discussion that needs to happen before we get to that point, but I did want to relay that idea.
All right. Any further discussion on that? Thanks, Gunnar. All right, then item 17 would be to enter into closed session. Is there a motion and a second to do that?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, all right, that carries. We'll enter in full session here.